Hi, welcome to Box to Board. Tonight we are talking with Lizy Simonin, is that right?
Simonin.
Simonin from Dungeons and a Dime, and you're involved in the project of Carved in Stone, which is on Kickstarter at the moment. Tell us a bit about it. I'm really excited for this one. I think this is a really interesting project.
Yeah, so Carved in Stone is it's set in the era of the Picts in Scotland. So I like to describe it as sort of after the Romans, but before the Vikings, when there was actually quite a few kingdoms in what we now know as Scotland, but we are focusing on the Picts in Pictland. The base book that we have already successfully kickstarted with the really, really generous pledges from people is a sort of campaign setting, game setting, so that you can set your game, it's system neutral. You can set your game in the world of Pictland. We are also trying to get to our stretch goal of £25,000, which is insane to say that. But then we'll get to write an adventure as well, set in Pictland, also system neutral. And we're working with archaeologists. We have an archaeologist on the team, Dr. Jeff Sanders, and we've gotten to meet loads of people who this is their specialty, is the Picts. And it's been really exciting. I didn't know anything about the Picts coming onto the project, so it's been exciting for me to learn, and it should give people an opportunity to discover a lot more that they didn't know about Picts.
Yeah, we had a discussion earlier on, and it's just that sense that this is a world that is a bit of a surprise to people whenever you actually get into it. It's not familiar, and that bit between the Romans and the Vikings is kind of quite alien and quite different to the world that we expect it to be.
Yeah, you really can't make assumptions based on sort of the expectations and the stereotypes that we have of that time period. You know, the Romans were no longer there, but the Picts actually saw themselves as a continuation of the Roman legacy. Yeah. At the time, the Picts actually had a myth that they came from Scythia. Yeah. I never know how to say that. They really wanted to connect to the classical world. Which, I think there's sometimes this idea that the Romans were gone and they were just gone and it was just ruins. But actually there was a memory, and people saw themselves as still part of that culture. And you didn't yet have the sort of Norse raiders that we imagine, but there still was enormous access by sea. That was sort of the highways of the time. So there was all sorts of trade from Europe. They could get Mediterranean wine, they could get nice glassware from France. There's all sorts of things that they had access to. They weren't just sort of like the naked barbarians in the woods that they're often portrayed as.
Yeah, I think it's that Hadrian's Wall thing, isn't it? It's like north of Hadrian's Wall, there's no civilization. And yet actually it would be culturally very heavily. How could you be in the age of Europe and not be influenced by the Romans? It's going to be culturally very Romanesque in a lot of ways, and certainly in the way they would see the world.
And they did have Roman ruins. They did have, because I'm in Glasgow, so of course I have to say there's the Antonine Wall as well. The Romans did get a little bit farther north. They got up to us. There's a parking lot not far from here where you can go see a Roman bathhouse. So. Wow. So they were living in the relics and the memory of it as well. One of the things I really love about exploring the time period is that there's this idea I think we have that at some point in history, everything was new. Everything was bright and shiny and freshly made. But, they had remnants of the Romans. They also had brocks, which are the Iron Age forts that are, there's sort of like these tower things. They're super cool. And they were made by people before the Picts, but the Picts would inhabit those. They tended to travel around quite a bit. They would inhabit those towers, for periods because it's a convenient place to stay. So they were interacting with the memory of the people who had come before them and had used that land before them. They're the ancient past, but they had an ancient past. I think is really surprising.
It feels like whenever I was looking at the project and whenever I was talking to you earlier on, it feels like this weird thing where it's history, but it's so weird in many respects that you go, this is kind of like fantasy. This is it's got that sort of sense of, this is a world that I thought I knew, and actually to explore that in a game, I think is a really exciting possibility. Purely because I'm not, like I said, you can't make assumptions. As a GM, you're going to have a lot of fun with this. It's going to be something that you can go, actually, let's mess with your heads a bit, which is always good as a GM. And let's be honest, most of the people who are going to buy into this, most of the people who are listening right now, you're going to be a GM, and you want to be able to mess with people, just a little bit, not too much, just a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think what's fun about the time period too is there's a lot of question marks we have. We don't know, when we were talking before, you mentioned like this is when Christianity is coming in, and it absolutely is, but it was not the be all end all. There was this whole other cult that existed, the Mithras cult. They were around from the Romans, and then there was also just whatever people believed in the pre-Christian era, which there's different interpretations of that, and we don't know what an individual picked, even if they were going to Sunday services or whatever. What did they actually believe? What did they go home and do? What did they do at festivals? And in our writing, we really try to make it plausible. We're not going to, there's no dragons, sadly, but we really want to make it plausible. But I think there's so much interpretation for, when you're entering that world as a GM or as a player. How are you going to interpret that? Is there a secret cult in the woods, or is everybody just sort of super chill with the fact that we all have totally different beliefs and, Steve next door worships cows? It could be anything.
Cows do feature a lot.
A lot of cows.
Cows are big. If you don't know much about this, but this is from an Irish point of view. I don't know why, but the Irish were always fighting over cows. That's the one thing I remember is cow raids. There's another cattle raid. We're having a raid about cows again. What's the thing with cows? And
they were very important in this period. Berg Head, which is a settlement. I mean, I would call it a city. It's obviously, the archaeologists would not, but city. Yeah. Cows were very significant. They're bulls in particular. Yeah. And with the adventure that we really want to write, there's some cow wrestling that will take place, which I am so excited, because I just think if you give a group of players, go steal a cow, think of just the chaos. I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, that could be a lot of fun. I love the fact that it's system neutral, because that gives a lot of flexibility and lets people dream up. If they're familiar with a system, they're going to run with it. Obviously, it's going to be D&D. It's going to be D&D safe, if you know what I mean, and work well with D&D. And you mentioned that there's Adventures on a Dime as well.
Yeah, so Brian, who's sort of the brains behind Dungeons on a Dime, he has a system called Adventures on a Dime. It's in 2.0 version now, which I haven't played 2.0, but I played the original, and it's so much easier for a newbie to pick up. Yeah. I've mostly played 5th edition D&D, and getting someone just to get through their character sheet so you can actually show them what the game is like pulling teeth sometimes. And so Brian's is very much geared for first-time player. Let's get going. You very, very intuitive. And that's going to be included in the book as an option, but we really want it to be sort of whatever system you want to use, whatever, different systems support different stories. Yeah. Obviously, they're all very flexible, but people have their favorite systems. Yeah. So it'll be Adventures on a Dime will be included as here's a suggestion, but it's not required.
So the good news, folks, is don't be intimidated by. Personally, I'm like, well, brilliant. I like the idea of that. But there'll be people who go, hang on, there's not a system. Don't be intimidated by that. There's a system you can run it with included, so you'll be able to do that. Yeah. And I have to say, why the Picts?
Yeah.
Why the Picts?
So actually, we've had questions about how did you end up doing, working with Scottish archaeologists? And actually, the Scottish archaeologists found us. Jeff Sanders, who's with the Society of Antiquaries of Scotland and Dig It, he contacted Brian and said, we've got all these new discoveries of, in Scottish archaeology that we really want to find innovative ways of just communicating with the public. What about a tabletop role-playing game? And I was already working with Brian on a project trying to get tabletop role-playing games into schools in Glasgow, which is where I work. And it worked as sort of an educational opportunity. We do want people to learn about the Picts, but it's not teaching materials, it's not curriculum. It would be used in partnership with what curriculum exists. So it's aimed for ages 12 and up, basically. So, children in school can use it, but also adults will have fun with it. And it came from that desire to just share new things that have been discovered. People with the Picts, there's a lot of stereotypes, they're covered in blue tattoos. They're out in the woods, wrestling bears or something. I don't know. But then also the main thing we have about Picts is their carved stones, which is where the name of the project comes from. And they're absolutely fascinating. These giant rocks with their strange symbols that not everyone can interpret. This very abstract symbols that appear all over their artwork, but no written records left behind. No, it's digging up bits and pieces from the past. So so I think it's so cool that any academic discipline suddenly goes, what if we get people to learn our stuff through game form? I'd like to see more folks try that.
It's that empathy you get whenever you play a character and you suddenly realize, good grief, these were real people facing real situations, and how would I have coped with that? I think that's really. I think it's exciting. I think there's that getting inside the head of somebody that you can get in a game that's really, really intriguing.
Yeah, I think that there's like you're saying, empathy, and we were talking before, the social skills that you learn, really, that was a big part of why I wanted to get gaming into schools. I work in literacy development, so I was like, it makes children read books. But at the same time, there is empathy, there's learning about other cultures in this particular case, but, also in general. Cooperation at the table. Yeah. That's one of the number one things that I find I have to explain to educators when I'm promoting using games is it's not competitive. It's not Fortnite. It's not, we are working together, and it's not even the players versus the GM. There's sometimes it feels like that. Yeah.
Well, it depends on the GM. No.
Absolutely. You get into someone's head in a completely different way, which is really exciting. And also, these are ordinary Picts that we're inviting people to play, not kings or saints or, wise men out in the woods or anything like that. Just, you're trying to manage your cows, and oh no, along comes an adventure ensues.
Along comes a D&D group who want to kill everything.
And steal your cows and set your village on fire.
and then steal the rope, despite the fact they've got 20 ropes.
Oh my gosh! Never have enough rope.
It just seems to be the case. Like, we must nick everything. No, you don't have to. But it's that sort of it is that thing trying to explain to people this is you're actually telling a story together.
Yes.
And as a GM, or as we joke about it, but as GMs, you want to have a surprising story. You want a story that you go, now I wouldn't have told it that way, but that's awesome. And that's the thing that I know for me makes GMing good fun. Is the sheer unpredictability of it.
I've never actually been a GM because I know. Well, I'm blessed to have many friends who are very enthusiastic GMs, and so I'm in so many games, and I've never had to run one for myself. I don't have the classic problem of everyone wants to play and no one wants to run it. Sure. But I write novels, and I'm very used to actually a bit more cooperation from the individuals involved. And the moment that you put me with real people, I'm just like, oh man, I don't know.
Why are we arguing over where to put things in the car?
So that's my secret confession is I've never run a game.
So folks, the news is if you're a GM who wants to actually play, you need to move to Scotland. It seems as if there's more GMs than players. This is the promised land of gaming.
They messaged me. They're like, I need an extra player for this thing, and I'm like, okay. Wow.
It's the exact opposite.
I live in the promised land. I know.
That's just sold it to me now. I'm just like, I got to find work in Scotland. Never happen. I'm a teacher. It's not going to happen. But it's really exciting. I mean, the thing that really struck me is at the moment there's 12 days, which I am confident you guys are going to hit.
Oh, thank you.
25,000 because you'll get that surge as people obviously have watched this video and are sold on it. But
absolutely, they're all going to give us all of their money.
It'll be, I'm confident of it because it's different and because it's something that people haven't seen before, and because actually, as players, we want to see worlds we haven't seen before, and this feels like something that is that. Now, if you don't know about the picks, and you're sitting going, I really still don't understand it, check out the Kickstarter because it explains it so well.
Yeah. And
check out the picks and see if. And what I think you'll find is you'll go, this is weird. This is not. I'm not in Kansas anymore. This isn't a fantasy setting. This is something else. So earlier on we were saying it's a bit like whenever you do something like set in feudal Japan, the rules are different and you just have to learn them, and that's what makes it fascinating. So it's that escapism that's. In the world that we live in at the moment, it's kind of nice to escape every now and again.
Absolutely. Though we have tried to, not that I want to turn anyone off with this, but we have tried to connect it to the modern world that we live in. Scotland is an enormously diverse country. I mean, I'm obviously not from here originally, but I've been here for quite some time. And we want to show how that's always been the case, that it's always been a place where cultures meet. The Romans brought so much with them and so many different people with them. They brought soldiers from Africa, and all across their empire. And then there's all these different kingdoms that were here as well. And the amount of trade that was going on, it was not homogenous here. And also, there were people from all sorts of backgrounds and all walks of life. And, there were, our adventure, I hope I'm not supposed to be like keeping things secret or something. Our adventure will involve a blacksmith, and actually it's very common for blacksmiths to be disabled due to various causes, injury, or I think it's something in the fumes or something. I'm going to get that wrong. Anyway, help us fund and we'll get the adventure and you'll find all about it. But just all the different kinds of people that were here.
But what I find has been really, really interesting talking to you is it's that thing. It was very common for. So it's not just, we're not just wedging this in. There's a reason this is here. There's a reason this is there, and I love the fact that it's a game that's rooted in the archaeology, but at the same time it's sort of not stifled by the archaeology, if you know what I mean. It's not a case of this is a history textbook. This is something different. This is a well-grounded, well-researched game. First and foremost, it's a game.
Like I said, plausibility is really important. It doesn't mean that, we need an archaeologist to come along and, and say, I dug up this rock that says the Picts had gay people, we can go, well, there's always been LGBTQ plus people. There would have been at that time, there's always been disabled people. There would have been at that time. There's always been neuroatypical people, all sorts of things. Just because that's how humanity works. And also, yeah, there's like I said before too, there's just so many question marks about what daily life was like for people.
Yeah.
We don't have, the records of that. So a lot of it is extrapolating from what we do have. And obviously, yeah, we follow to the letter as much as we can, what we have carved in stone. And then we fill in the gaps as best that we can.
It's funny because as I'm sitting doing this, the bit that gives me goose pimples of them all is I'm sitting thinking, now somewhere there will be somebody playing this game, in this probably quite young, maybe in a school, and I'll sit and go, I think I want to study this, and that's whenever it'll get cool. That's the next level. You sort of, I love things like that, and I think it's got the potential to really inspire people to take a bit of an interest in actually the history of the place where they're from. And if you're not from Scotland, don't let that put you off. It'll encourage you to sort of, it's that sort of, actually, I thought I knew the history of Scotland, and suddenly I'm going, I didn't know that. And I've been captivated by it. I think it's a brilliant little project, and it's doing remarkably well, which is brilliant, and so good.
Folks have been so generous with the pledges, and also we've been really fortunate to have so much media coverage as well. We were in the BBC, which was nuts, and Dicebreaker covered us as well. So yeah, it's been really cool.
And now you've been unboxed aboard,
and now I'm here.
It's success now. Clearly,
we've made it. We've made it.
Lizy, it's been an absolute joy talking to you. And,
well, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for taking an interest in our little project. It means so much just to have people excited about it.
Yeah, it's great, and you've got my pledge. Well,
thank you.
I'm putting it in tonight, so but it's been absolutely superb. And thank you very much for your time, and good luck. And whenever it comes out, I will do an unboxing of what we get through, and we'll plug a bit more and see how we go. Brilliant.
Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.